I dared to watch the scariest ghost videos alone, and something followed me home. I never should have opened that door. My heart raced as I thought about what lay beyond. It was supposed to be a quiet night. Just me and my laptop, the flickering screen illuminating the shadows in my room. The comfort of my blankets wrapped around me, the soft hum of the lonely night. But as the night's entertainment spiraled into the sinister, I felt a chill crawling up my spine. Each video was more terrifying than the last. The horrific faces on screen haunted my thoughts. Strange sounds echoed in the dark whispers, maybe? Or was it just the wind? My room felt cold, no, frigid, as if the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. I glanced around, the shadows shifting in a way that felt wrong, like they were alive. I shook it off. It's just my imagination, I told myself. Then came the noises, thumps from the kitchen, a creak from the hall. My heart thudded in my chest, an urgent beat that urged me to move, to investigate. I tried to laugh it off, but the sound felt hollow. It wasn't just a silly video. Something was unsettling. With a sigh, I finally stood, my legs shaky as I took my first step toward the kitchen. Every creak of the floorboard seemed like a warning. I turned on the light, squinting against the brightness, but nothing was there. Just the clock ticking ominously, mocking the stillness of the space. The fridge hummed a tune of isolation, but something caught my eye. A shadow flickered just beyond the edge of the light, a figure creeping at the threshold. My breath hitched, and the chill held me captive. I was about to turn away when a sudden crash exploded from behind me. I spun, adrenaline coursing through me. There, looming at the edge of my vision, a shape flickered, tall, dark, and inexplicably wrong. A figure shrouded in silence, as if it were absorbing the world around it. Just as I opened my mouth to scream, the lights flickered, plunging me into darkness, my heart racing like it was trying to escape. What was that? The room whispered secrets that I couldn't understand. A metallic taste filled my mouth, fear gripped my limbs. The wall felt like it was closing in, and I staggered back, legs trembling. I turned to flee, but the door slammed shut with a thunderous crack, trapping me inside. I was not alone anymore. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The silence pulsed with a menacing heartbeat, an eerie lull that gripped me in its icy fingers. My eyes blinked open, the darkness surrounding me thick and palpable, as if it had mass, an enemy that pressed down upon my chest. I tried to sit up, but my limbs felt heavy, weighted by a fear I could not comprehend. As I lay there, disoriented, snippets of memory clawed their way to the surface. A fleeting image of shadows insatiably stretching toward me, voices layered thick like smoke, then nothing. Had I been unconscious? Or had I simply slipped into a dream so twisted that I would wish I had never awoken? Gingerly, I forced myself to roll over onto my side. My surroundings were foreign. I realized I was no longer in my house. Cold, hard ground met my skin, splintered wooden planks jutting out like teeth from a grotesque mouth. My heart raced as I pushed myself to my feet, the sound of scuttling retreating just out of sight, pulling me toward yet deeper shadows. Is anyone here? My voice trembled in the emptiness like a fallen leaf swaying in the wind, fragile, foolish. But the oppressive void swallowed my words. In the grim darkness, I stumbled forward, following the contours of the walls to find a way out. My fingers brushed against the surfaces, peeling paint and rough textures filled my senses with an insidious dread. In the distance, an unnatural glow flickered, reminiscent of the blue light that had drawn me in the first place. I moved toward it, desperate for clarity, bewildered by the dread that clawed at my insides. As I approached, the flicker resolved itself into a faint shimmer, a mirror perhaps, though I could not recall seeing one in this place. Stepping closer, the glow intensified, revealing the reflection once again. But this time, the grotesque figure was not just a part of me. It was multiplying, lingering in the background, gradually intensifying its form, manifesting a spectrum of tormented faces. Each one was a reflection of anguish, their mouths opening wide in silent screams, hair unkempt, clothes tattered like lost spirits torn from their graves. "No," I gasped, stumbling back. Yet the floor behind me crumbled, sending me crashing into the mirror's frame. Fragments shattered across the room, each piece sending splinters of panic racing up my spine. I found myself staring into the shards, those endless reflections of despair clawing at my sanity. Then silence erupted. A dreadful quiet swept over me. The shadows paused, as if holding their breath. And I, too, became aware of Ida's dreadful, insistent presence lurking just beyond the realm of my sight. It was heavier than before, pressing persistently against my back. The air shifted, prickling against my skin, awakening memories, creating echoes of the spectral laughter I had once heard. The whispers from before returned more layered, more vivid. "You shouldn't have looked. It knows you now. It sees you." Turning wildly, my heart raced as the sound of small feet padded quietly around me, teasing me from the edge of darkness. I was not alone. All those peripheral shadows had taken form, inching closer, colluding to taunt. I followed the whispers, my own thoughts joining the cacophony, desperate for solace. "You can never escape," a voice rasped, deep and guttural. I whipped around, the shadows coalescing, forming a monstrous silhouette too vast for the small room. In its depth, faces emerged distorted, twisted in anguish, merging like smoke billowing from a demonic fire. Then, from the fractured mirror, a hand reached out, not tethered to a body. It clawed toward me, too fast, too eager, and I realized with dawning horror that its grip was not meant for my own, but for the shadow beside me. It pulsed and flickered, urging me to choose. With a scream caught in my throat, I careened backward, retreating from the affixed darkness. The shadows lunged. I could feel them grasping, pulling, begging me to abandon my reality. And there, behind the wave of souls seeking solace, a pair of glowing eyes locked onto mine, shimmering with familiar malice and knowing. I stumbled back, crashing into something solid, and the repose burst like a dam, flooding the air around me with a cacophony of desperate cries as the mirror's hand brushed against my cheek. Its touch was both icy and searing. Paralyzed, I watched as the darkness enveloped my vision. The whispers crescendoed into a deafening wail. The clock I had feared earlier ticked once more, and my heart knew a time dread could annihilate. And just then, the whispering ceased. An echo of a final thought lingered in the air, an admonition or a call to arms. Trapped in a nexus of light and shadow, a terrible truth struck me. There would be no escape unless I confronted the face of dread itself. The walls trembled, and in that moment, the ground beneath my feet began to crack, a vast chasm forming, darkness swelling as if the world itself demanded my choice. I peered into the abyss, and the laughter returned, enveloping me whole. The figure swayed gently, a grotesque marionette dancing to a discordant tune only it could hear. Its otherworldly form shimmered in the dim light, twisting in and out of coherence, blurring the line between dream and nightmare. My breath hitched in my throat, a primal instinct urging me to run, to hide, but I was frozen, ensnared by its icy grip. "Did you think you could escape?" It crooned, a voice that slithered beneath my skin like a venomous serpent. "We are everywhere, little one. You've brought us with you." The shadows that had once been confined to the dark corners of the previous realm slithered around my feet, whispering promises of power and dread, mingling with the sterile scent of decay that hung heavy in the air. I could taste the bitterness of fear against my tongue, the very essence of something wicked lurking just beyond my grasp. "What do you want from me?" I managed to whisper, defiantly trying to pierce the veil of dread with a question, though my voice trembled. Its faceless head tilted, and the shifting energy surrounding it snapped tight, as if contemplating my worth. "We crave what resides within you," it sneered, a mouth suddenly stretching across its contorted visage, revealing rows of jagged teeth that gleamed in the ghostly light that I willed myself to retreat. But the room, the walls, seemed to ripple and bulge, closing in like a vice. The sterile metal began to pulsate, reminding me of the heartbeat reverberating around us. Each throb felt like a countdown, each echo intensifying until the room seemed to tremor with anticipation, awaiting the next moment. I turned, casting desperate glances to gauge my escape route. My eyes found a corridor stretching endlessly into the abyss, the lights flickering erratically like dying stars. Shapes flickered in the distance just as the figure began to laugh, an ungodly cacophony twisting into unholy glee. "You can't escape," it whispered, its voice a thunderous echo that swallowed the darkness, feeding off my mounting terror. "You're home now. Join us. Let our darkness consume you." Give in, but I couldn't. Instinct urged me forward, every ounce of my being screaming for survival. I stumbled into the corridor, the hazy figures lurking just beyond the fringes of the dim light, shifting with malevolent intent. They were remnants of lost souls, survivors of this despairing existence, their elongated limbs stretched as if reaching out for salvation or revenge. I could feel their whispered cries clawing at my sanity. The lust for life mingled with the hungry shadows wrapping around my heart like chains. As I darted down the corridor, I realized it wasn't simply an escape. My very presence was calling forth the anguish of the past, awakening the restless spirits trapped within these walls. The heartbeat grew louder, now an enraged drum, thundering through the clad walls and resonating within my chest. Panic surged anew. What had I unleashed? I could almost sense them, their cold breath caressing my neck, their dead eyes penetrating the veil of the living, merely waiting for my moment of weakness. Suddenly, behind me, the figure surged forward, its form elongating as it screeched, chasing me down the corridor with a ferocity that sent shards of ice racing through my veins. The lights flickered violently, revealing glimpses of doors lining the passage, each one marked with names and dates, layers of anguish seeping from the cracked paint. I knew in my gut that each door held a story, a life consumed, a fragment of the same dark fate I now faced. In my blind terror, I wrenched open the nearest door, desperation guiding my hands. The staleness met me like the embrace of an old friend, but I shoved inside without a second thought, slamming it shut behind me. I gasped, momentarily hidden in shadows, the only barrier between me and whatever malevolent entity sought my despair. But darkness clung to me, suffocating, a visceral reminder that I was never alone. The walls pulsed around me, whispering once more, and that low hum escalated into a cacophony of tormented voices. They cried out, mourning the living, beckoning to me from beyond the confines of this room. The figure pounded against the door, its laughter crescendoing into a ghastly symphony as it screeched at the emptiness of this haven gone awry. I pressed my ear against the cold metal, realizing too late that the whispers weren't just coming from inside the room, they were woven into the fabric of the space itself, seeping through the cracks like poison. Join us, they crooned, the syllables curling around my reality, invading the sanctity of my mind. Suddenly, the door began to warp, the wood screaming as the figure clawed its way through, its form distorting and shifting, searching for a way in. I could almost see its eyes, glistening with hunger, fixated on the weakness that thrummed like a beacon from within me. In that last moment, the siren's call became unbearable, the pressure within my skull pulsating in time with the heartbeat of this hellish realm. I glanced into the darkness, where eyes glimmered with an insatiable thirst, leering at me through the hazy gloom, and I felt my heart seize in sudden recognition. They wanted in. "Help me," I screamed, realizing that the shadows had found their form, had found me. But all I could hear was their chilling laughter echoing back, growing louder, and drowning me in the cacophony of despair. The door splintered, and as the shadows breached the threshold, I braced myself, knowing whatever was about to come would claim me in a way I could never have imagined. The last thing I saw was their eyes, bright with malevolence, reflecting not just the void, but my own living soul, a beacon clamoring for survival. And then darkness folded into itself, swallowing me whole. It was in that void that my consciousness splintered, and for an eternity, I hung suspended in the surreal abyss. Time warped, mortar and flesh losing their meaning as threads of panic wove together with memories long buried. But even amidst the chaos, as if tethered to an unrelenting will, I felt the shadows still reaching for me, their cold tendrils curling around my awareness with a possessive fervor. Then, suddenly, The nothingness spat me back into existence, thrusting me into a stale, too bright light that clawed at my senses. I was sprawled across a wooden floor, gasping, the metallic taste of dread coating my tongue. Panic surged anew as I recognized the simplicity of my surroundings. I was in an old living room, relics of a past life decorating the walls, framed family photos, porcelain figurines, an ancient grandfather clock steadfast and accusing. But this was not home. It couldn't be. As I stumbled to my feet, dread twisted my gut tighter when I saw the reflection staring back at me from the cracked mirror above the mantel. My skin had turned ashen, eyes wide and unfocused, haunted by whispers just out of reach. I could feel their weight upon me, the remnants of those who had passed through the corridors of the accursed building still pressing on my soul. The front door stood ajar, the wind whispering to me through the lingering fog. But that familiar heartbeat pulsed beneath the surface, louder now, more insistent, as if urging me to stay, to listen, to succumb. I stepped closer, compelled but terrified, feeling another presence lurking just beneath the veil of my awareness. Suddenly, a shadow flitted past the window. My breath caught, and I spun around, heart racing, only to find an empty room staring back at me. I could still feel a lingering chill. It was a memento from the darkness I had escaped. My skin prickled with apprehension, and I raced to the door, ready to flee, when an insidious laughter filled the air, a voice that sliced through silence like a knife. "You thought you could leave?" It sang, a melody dripping with malice that echoed in my bones, mingling seamlessly with the cacophony of distant cries. "You can't hide from us." My feet hesitated on the threshold. Outside beckoned like an open maw, but every instinct screamed for me to stay within this haunting shell of a home. I pressed a hand against the wall, feeling the pulsing rhythm emanating through the wood, a heartbeat that swelled and waned, echoing the horrors I had witnessed in that nightmarish corridor. "Help me," I gasped. Only this time it was not the plea of a victim. It was a desperate acknowledgement that the shadows had pursued me home, and I was the lighthouse guiding them to the shores of sanity. That I stumbled back, and in that moment, the ground quaked as if responding to my confusion, shaking off layers of dust and debris. The old grandfather clock began to chime, its tune distorted, twisting time into an unbearable parody that clawed at my sanity. Each clang brought with it the memories, faces long forgotten, echoes of laughter that cracked and splintered into screams intermingled with shadows. "Join us," the voice droned again, this time mixed with the harmonies of the trapped spirits from before. From the corners of the room, they materialized shrouded figures, their outlines smeared with sorrow as they reached for me, fingers elongated, clawing at the very fabric of the air between us. "Please," I begged, backing against the wall. I didn't mean to, but they were not listening. With each step forward, they transformed from memories into something tangible, horrid shapes born from despair, their eyes now reflecting my own terror, demanding acknowledgement. Suddenly, amidst the thrumming darkness, I spotted a figure I recognized, a lost family member, eyes glazed with despair, lips parted in an endless wail. "You brought us with you," it screamed, a testament to my dread, its form flickering like a dying flame. "You must pay the toll." The shadows surged forward, and just as I understood what their demands demanded of me, the floor underfoot began to split, revealing a gaping mawa pit of darkness, drawing the light away like the bite of an abyss. "No!" I screamed at the encroaching void, realizing I was not merely a captive but a harbinger of horror, a conduit between realms. I felt the pull, a treacherous invitation beckoning me to tip into the dark well of despair. But before I could react, countless hands erupted from the fissure, grasping fiercely, each clawed limb demanding an answer, an escape, or perhaps a sharing of my very essence. My heart thundered. I could feel every beat counting down to a moment I could not grasp. That I lunged for the door, but the specters loomed ever closer, ready to draw me into their sorrow. Just as my fingers grazed the handle, a familiar laugh wrapped around me like a noose and pulled me back into the shadows. The figure had returned, and this time, its eyes burned with undeniable fury. "You are part of us now," it growled, the laughter transforming into a relentless roar as the darkness engulfed the edges of my vision, stealing the precious light along with my scream that echoed in the depths of oblivion. Everything around me faded, a realization crashing down in that final moment. I had not chosen to escape the darkness, I had simply become its vessel. And that was when I saw a door to the corridor had flung itself open behind the shadows, revealing the endless stretch of anguish waiting to embrace me once more. As the door to the corridor swung wide, a pulse of darkness surged forth, a rolling tide threatening to breach the fragile sanctuary of the living room. The thick air thickened with malevolence, coiling around me with a deceptive familiarity that promised both terror and revelation. I felt as if the shadows themselves had gained sentience, beckoning me back into their gaping maw. It was a heart-stopping moment that left me teetering on the brink of sanity. With my heart hammering wildly against my ribs, I clenched the doorknob, torn between the instinct to flee and a morbid curiosity that anchored me in place. The laughter that filled the air grew unsettlingly polyphonic, blending the sound of joyous children's giggles with the shrieks of the damned, creating a soundscape permeated with a deep, unending dread. My breath escaped, misting the surface of the cracked mirror near the clock, swirling like errant thoughts clawing at the edges of my mind. "Don't," I heard myself whisper, though my plea was lost in the sinister symphony, a note of bleak despair that stayed lodged in my throat. I watched in horror as the shadowy figures continued to writhe, their forms growing more defined, faces showing a grotesque display of emotions, some masked by anguish, others by a maniacal glee. They circled around the door, reaching for me with impossibly long limbs that twisted unnaturally, some flitting in and out of focus as if reality itself struggled to hold on to their essence. Then, through the unnerving cacophony, I noticed a shift. From the recesses of the corridor, a before-unseen light flickered, a flash of brilliance lurching to life comparably to the restraints on a wild beast. Yet it was not a welcoming illumination. It siphoned the very shadows into itself, growing larger, more menacing. Shadows spun and funneled into the doorway, merging into an entity that hovered just at the threshold, a grotesque amalgamation of despair and longing being crafted from every scream, every tear shed within these walls. "You think you can forget?" it whispered, and the aura of its voice seemed to dissolve the very fabric of reality around it, pulling threads from my sanity, unraveling them further. "You think you can leave us in the dark?" The emotion bleeding from its words clutched at my heart, filling the void within me with sad, familiar warmth that both terrified and intrigued. I could see my lost family member within the rolling shadows, its eyes now unshed tears, an echo of my past that tied grotesquely to the present. "Stay with us. Set us free," it sobbed silently, its face morphing into the last reflected image I had seen before collapsing into the abyss. How fitting, I thought grimly, that it too was now a harbinger of my doom. That I staggered back, every instinct screaming for me to escape. The hand gripping the doorknob slipped, and I could sense the doorway winking at me, a malevolent eye that waited for my submission. The shadows began to twist and writhe, screaming in agony as they warred with the light from the corridor, expanding, contracting, their desperate energy vibrating through the air like the strum of an unseen harp. And then they rushed forward, thick tendrils reaching for me in a concerted attack that stole my breath. I backed toward the fireplace, panting now, battling the ghostly winds that sought to drag me back into the void. "No, I won't go," I shouted, my voice swallowed by the rising tide of lamentations. It was then that I noticed an opening beside the grandfather clock that hadn't been there before, a dark seam in the wall, barely perceptible, yet impossibly inviting. It carried an alluring scent of forgotten memories and unlocked doors, mingled with bitter echoes of laughter that faded too quickly, like a dream slipping away with the dawn. I felt the pull of it, like Gravisha's siren song promising respite from the encroaching shadows writhing around me. I turned, torn between the urge to flee deeper into the house or confront the entity lingering in the doorway, reveling in my turmoil, savoring my plight. Just as I was about to step toward the crevice in the wall, a figure barreled forward, materializing from the darkness as if breaking free from the very shadows that sought to consume me. It was a child, their eyes wide, reflecting sheer terror and a haunting familiarity that struck a chord deep within. "Don't listen to them," the little voice trembled, filled with an urgency that clawed at my heart. But before I could process their warning, the tendrils of shadow coiled violently around the child, their cries silenced in an instant. Time fell away as disbelief surged through me. I was at the precipice of terrible choices and haunting decisions. The child, my child, was trapped amidst these horrors, sacrificed to a darkness I did not fully understand. I could feel the weight of my eyes weaving through the shadows how many souls lay in waiting, chained by my hesitance. As I stood frozen in dread, the shadows grew bolder. They surged toward me, a flurry of dark hands outstretched, whispering promises of relief if I would just let my heart surrender. With the child still locked away in their eternal grasp, the walls around me vibrated, cracking as the grandmother clock's toll reached its maddening crescendo. Suddenly, the laughter morphed into a single, haunting voice that reverberated to the core of my existence. "Your time is up." The figure droned from the corridor, and all at once, the very foundations of the room crumbled. I reached for the opening, the speck of light pulling at my very soul as I dove forward. The shadows roared their fury, a cacophony of anger and betrayal chasing behind. But just as I breached the threshold, the darkness grabbed hold of my ankle and yanked me back, dragging me away from the fleeting light. In that moment of helplessness, as the shadows filled every crevice, a new, chilling realization enveloped my thoughts. Though I had desperately tried to run, I was bound by the very essence of what I had become. And somewhere in the depths of that sinister laughter, a familiar echo whispered a single, devastating truth: I was not the one seeking escape in this game. I was merely becoming the next shade in their gallery of despair. I gasped, feeling the pull of the abyss hum in my ears, tugging at my resolve in one final desperate sway. And that's when the shadows parted, revealing something that could drive even the most steel-hearted to madness. Suffocated by despair, I turned and faced the true horror waiting at the edge of the corridor. A dark figure stood there, its laughter chillingly triumphant as it beckoned me to come closer. Desperation surged through me, for it was then I truly saw. It was me. The realization slashed through me like a knife, snapping my mind into fragments. The nightmarish face staring back from the shadow was a grotesque reflection of my own, a mirror warped by anguish and loss, twisted by the darkness that had seeped into my very being. The mirrored self grinned, its eyes alight with malice, sending a cold tremor rippling through my spine. "You thought you could leave?" It taunted, each word cutting deeper than the last, the very essence of it unearthing all my fears. That I stumbled backward, swallowing a scream that threatened to erupt. But the shadows whispered triumphantly, encircling me like a noose drawn tight. Every terrified heartbeat drummed in tandem with the throbbing darkness that surrounded the figure, echoing my childhood fears in a terrifying crescendo. I sought out the light again, glancing desperately at the crevice I had almost entered, but the pull of the corridor grew stronger, tethering me to the dark entity. "You belong to us," it echoed with a haunting familiarity, the shadows swirling at its feet, as though acknowledging its claim over me. The room seemed to elongate and tremble, shifting under the weight of unspoken secrets. Memories flashed: BYMY family's laughter, warmth of shared moments, and then the acrid chill of their loss tainted every recollection. "They are gone," it breathed, the room thickening with shadows as it stepped closer. "But you can stay forever. Join us." With every step it took, a sense of despair gathered around me like a thick fog. I tried to grapple with the impossibility of this moment. Could I truly have been altered to the point of becoming my own haunted figure? Was the darkness feasting on every shred of hope I had left? I shook my head, attempting to dispel the paralyzing illusion, but it only seemed to grow stronger, urging the shadows to tighten their grip. "Foolish girl," a whisper curled around me, a chorus of disembodied voices rising in a chorus of mockery. "You think you can run from the truth?" Each shadow spun, creating a cyclone of torment, unveiling countless faces that merged and twisted, some bearing loving smiles, others echoing horrible testament to every soul lost in the confines of this accursed place. As my back hit the hard wood of the wall, I felt the fabric of reality begin to shred around me, the malevolent laughter basking in my despair. My resilience faltered, and a horrifying truth dawned: this was more than a reflection. It was the embodiment of my grief, my guilt, in my buried nightmares. Just then, a flicker of another figure appeared behind the darkness, a pale outline struggling to break free. "Help me," the child's voice, my child's voice, wove through the air like a fragile thread. The deep connection pulled at my heart, igniting a spark of desperation. "Don't let it take you," I cried, clutching at the wall as if it might anchor me back to the light while the shadows lunged forward sharp, darting tendrils attempting to snare anything they could reach. Panic surged within me. I couldn't let them win, couldn't allow the darkness to consume another innocent soul, not my child. Fueled by the flames of maternal instinct, I plunged forward, through the mirage of my own visage and into the chaos that writhed around me. I pulled the child's spirit toward the sliver of light just out of reach, the shadows howling in anger and confusion as they ripped through the very fabric of the air. "Hold on to me," I shouted, feeling the weight of their grip loosening slightly under the urgency of my plead. In the eye of the cyclone of shadows, I caught a glimpse of them figures swarming in the threshold, screaming, pulling me back, their ghastly faces twisted in eternal anguish. "Leave her," I screamed, focusing every ounce of will, emboldened by the desperate grasp of the child's hand wrapped tightly around mine. Pulling until I felt a searing pain bolt through my forearm, a shadow severing my flesh as it tore me from my sanctuary. And in that harrowing moment, life blurred into a merging of screams and laughter, a confusion of emotions colliding. Thrashing in the unreal storm, I suddenly realized I wasn't just fighting for us. I was becoming a conductor for the very chaos surrounding me, channeling despair into power neither of us could control. But as I reached for the light of salvation that seemed to fade like a dying ember, I heard the guttural laughter shift into something new, something much more sinister. "You cannot outrun your darkness," the echoes sang, spinning the shadows toward the entrance once more. The final flicker of light shattered, and suddenly everything fell silent as I was swallowed whole into the maelstrom of shadows. Grasping darkness replaced the energy of my desperate struggle, and my senses failed, giving way to a profound and terrifying stillness. Fear raced through me. I was left suspended between the realms of terror and tranquility, caught in a moment that could stretch into infinity. And that's when I felt Ida's gentle brush against my cheek, a warmth that radiated through the cold, dark ether, turning my heart to ice. "Mommy?" The familiar voice pierced through the veil of despair, igniting every protective instinct within me. But as I turned, the world twisted to reveal not my child, but the figure, smiling, eyes wide in a hauntingly innocent way. "Come play with us forever." With that, the shadows surged, and I screamed, realizing too late that I was no longer myself but trapped in the gallery of despair, longing for escape as the door to the other side began to close. The laughter echoed as the darkness breached all light, swallowing my last heartbeat in its suffocating embrace. The sensation of being pulled apart by opposing forces enveloped me as I flailed in the suffocating gloom. Just as I thought I was slipping irrevocably into the depths of despair, a new chill seized the atmosphere. The air grew thick, resonating with a low hum that felt both foreign and hauntingly familiar. It sank into my bones, vibrating with an unsettling energy that prickled my skin. The room spun, and the laughter had transformed. Now it sounded almost mocking, a cacophony of joy warped into pain. I stretched out my hands, desperate to claw my way back to sanity, to the reality outside this sinister tableau. Yet, every flailing movement only deepened the shadows' hold, drawing me tighter into their abyss. "Why do you resist? You belong with us," the voice of my dark reflection crooned, seductive and smooth as silk, chilling me to the core. Its allure was potent, an intoxicating temptation that whispered of eternal escape from grief and pain. Joining the endless waltz of the lost souls was an idea that danced on the fringes of sanity. Limitless silence beckoned like a drug. But deep inside, I could still feel the flicker of maternal love, a remnant of hope that resisted this inviting embrace. Suddenly, like an electric shock, a presence ignited the shadows, sending a jolt through the darkness. "No, let her come to me." A different, authoritative voice sliced through the overlapping temptations, somehow fighting back against the relentless pull. It resonated with a dark echo that sent shards of ice into my very soul. I turned toward the sound, and there stood a tall silhouette, its features obscured in the swirling dark. An odd familiarity tinged the air. "Who are you?" I gasped, my heart pounding, igniting a spark of courage amid the consuming fear. "What do you want?" "Keep your eyes on me," it urged, holding a hand aloft. As it did, wisps of shadows curdled and shrank back, revealing glimpses of moments pulled from the past, faces of lost loved ones shimmering in and out of focus, screams electrified with sorrow, and laughter tormented by betrayal. "Don't look away," it commanded, and I felt the compulsion of the shadows intensify around me, desperately trying to siphon my attention back to the figure that was all too eager to claim me once more. Though I fought against the overwhelming tide, the familiar face staring back from the shadows became clearer, an anguished visage that was finally recognizable beneath the malevolence. My mother. Stripped of her warmth and love, she hovered at the edge of the dark abyss, reaching toward me with trembling hands. "Remember our light, my darling," she whispered, though her voice felt muffled, battling against the chaos surrounding us. "You were never meant to stay here." And just as she spoke, the darkness swelled fiercely, whispering, dripping, seething threats that intertwined with the fabric of my fears. "She lies," it shrieked, each word a slap against my sanity. "Join us, feel true freedom. Let go of her. We will give you what you desire." The ground beneath me began to tremble, shattering the ephemeral grasp of hope. I didn't want to be her, didn't want to succumb to the chilling embrace that promised no pain but bore eternal torment instead. With each moment, the shadows coiled tighter, pulling my limbs, my very essence, toward an endless darkness. The trappings of reality blurred as time became fluid, and dread cemented itself deep within my psyche. "That I can help you," the figure called out, pain lacing its voice, but my mind raced. It was suffocating. The abyss crooned with alluring promises of oblivion. I hesitated, torn between two worlds, the voiceless lure of the shadows and the flickering love emanating from the specter of my mother. Then, breaking through my turmoil, I felt the familiar heartbeat of my child resonate once more, a soft thrumming that echoed in my chest. "Mommy," it pleaded, sending an electric shock of urgency. With newfound resolve, I gritted my teeth and reached for my mother's hand, feeling a tremor of connection that pulled me back from the brink. But as our fingers nearly touched, deep and furious laughter erupted around us, shaking the very air. "You cannot escape," the dark entity roared, convulsing the shadows into a frenzy that threatened to tear apart my resolve. In that moment, everything shattered: the light, the connection, and the very essence of hope. And I was seized by the dark reflection, dragging me into its depths of despair. Just as the last remnants of warmth disappeared, a distant echo caught my ear, the familiar sound of a child's laughter twisting into a chilling warning. "Mommy, don't look back." Frozen by the searing pain of realization, I ripped my gaze from my mother, staring into the swirling void beyond me. With horror, I understood that what I had inadvertently given into wasn't my reflection, but a trap, a mirror for the darkness that fed off the depths of my despair. "No," I cried, my voice lost in the howling chaos that surrounded me. "I want," but the shadows seized my words, weaving them into their frayed. It happened in a split second. A blinding flash illuminated the void, and I caught a glimpse of something far beyond, the unmistakable silhouette of my child fluttering on the other side, lips parting in a silent scream. The darkness tightened its grasp as I watched, horrified and helpless, as the portal abruptly began to close, swallowing my child into its everlasting night. "Come join us forever." The wicked laughter echoed painfully in my ears as the world darkened, the echoes of sorrow crashing over my consciousness like a tidal wave. And in that unforgiving instant, I realized the truth: this could never be over. The cycle of despair had only just begun. I awoke in pitch blackness, the crushing weight of silence pressing against my chest. I was disoriented, limbs heavy as if encased in lead. My heart hesitated, a timid thrum amid the vast stillness. I pulled myself upright, but as I balanced on the edge of consciousness, the memories crashed over me like a storm. Hallways crawled with shadows. Echoes of laughter distorted until they twisted into something hollow and malevolent. The urgency clawed at the back of my mind, a stark reminder of the child I could not fail to save. Where was I? I blinked until the shadows blurred, then bit down on confusion, letting instinct navigate the encroaching darkness. Suddenly, a pinprick of light flickered into existence, an eerie glow radiating from the depths, illuminating twisted walls that morphed and undulated before me. The light drew me in, beckoning like a siren, promising answers to questions I dared not voice. I was urged forward, and as I crept closer, the realization met his darkness felt intimate, enveloping as an old friend. But the light was a trap that as I approached, the shadows recoiled, retreating into the recesses behind me, revealing thousands of twisted faces etched with helpless despair. Each one promised something forbidden. I shuddered but could not look away. Then a dreadful sound shattered the silence. The familiar laughter of my child emanated from within the glow, warped into something unrecognizable, a gleeful echo intertwined with something sinister. My heart raced as I stumbled back, catching a glimpse of a small figure standing in the light. For a fleeting moment, hope ignited within me. "Mommy, help!" It was a cruel illusion, a reflection of my deepest fears. The figure morphed into my own twisted visage, its eyes pools of despair shrouded in darkness, a malevolent echo of my every haunting regret. The laughter cascaded and merged, a cacophony of anguish spilling forth. "You've brought us home, dear one," the voice whispered, laced with a seductive malice that sent ice coiling around my heart. "You're one of us now." Terror stopped my breath. The truth cracked through the facade like a jagged shard of glass. I was not escaping this darkness. I was entwining myself further within its depths. Memories flooded my mind, faces of my family, stagnant within the shadows, pulling me toward a fate I could not accept. I was but a vessel, me essence siphoned to feed this insatiable void. "Join the lost," the voices called, their chorus rising in a chilling harmony, insistent and inviting. "Embrace the darkness you've borne. Do you not feel our call?" I staggered from the overwhelming pull, heart thundering against the dread of relinquishing my will. I gasped, backing away from the abyss, but they were relentless. The guttural laughter intensified, reverberating off the walls, drowning me in horrific echoes, ripping the last strands of sanity from taut threads of hope. "Look not away. Embrace your fate." With newfound desperation, I lashed out, eyes drawn to the tremors that split the shadows. And there, shifting figures reached toward faces of those I had lost, trapped in a cycle I could not fathom. Their expressions morphed from agony to something sinister, their fingers elongated, beckoning me to join them in the depths of their sorrow. Suddenly, I felt it, a pull so forceful and intoxicating lure toward the light of my lost child that resonated deep within me. I fought against it, but my very being craved to let go, to fall into the arms of oblivion, where pain ceased to exist. But amidst the chaos, a voice emerged, a familiar, tender call, seeping through the din of despair. "Help me." It was the urging that rattled my soul, igniting fierce determination deep within. I could not abandon this child, not again. I took a trembling step toward the light, ignoring the chorus of sorrow, clinging fiercely to the flicker of hope. "Mommy," my child called again. That I surged forward, thrusting through the murmurs of anguish, battling against the swirling tide. But those faces, twisted and sorrowful, gnashed their teeth in rage at my defiance. "You can't escape," they cried, as the darkness clawed at my heels, and I felt the cold fingertips of despair rasp against my skin. Tension coiled tightly in my chest, each heartbeat a countdown. If I couldn't reach the light, I would become part of the shadows, forever lost in oblivion. I grasped at the luminescence, feeling the sting of pain and memory as I violently pulled away from the grasp of my dark reflection. The light surged into me, flooding away sorrow and igniting a glimmer of hope within my heart. The distortions howled, their cacophony echoing through the void. In that moment, everything shattered. I was expelled from the depths of despair and thrust back into a blindingly bright reality. The darkness hissed angrily as I emerged from the vortex of shadows, tumbling uncontrollably into pooled illumination. But as I stumbled to my feet, gasping for breath, The familiar shapes of my living room surrounded me. The clock ticked ominously. The air reeked of decay. I pressed my back against the wall as an unbearable realization dawned on meth connection I thought I had severed was not gone. It lingered, a tether from my soul back to the corridor of despair, and just then, from the edges of my vision, the sinister laughter reverberated in the distancia promise, a threat. I felt its whispers curl back into my mind. You are forever ours. The door is always open. The shadows lurked just beyond sight, ready and hungry, waiting for the moment I would inevitably falter. My breath caught in my throat as a single icy note wrapped around my spine. I understood now. I hadn't just confronted their darkness, I had become a part of it. And with shivers of dread creeping up my spine, I realized as I stared into the empty corners of my home that they had followed me back, waiting patiently for my own darkness to take root. I was their vessel, and the never-ending cycle of horror had only just begun. In the suffocating stillness of my living room, I caught a final glimpse of something lurking behind the veil of shadows. It grinned back at me, familiar yet grotesque, eyes glinting with malevolent delight. Welcome home, it cooed, the laughter echoing in a symphony of desolation. And I understood, with pure, visceral horror the true nightmare had just started to awaken.